This is Texas. Endless flatlands stretching toward the horizon under a blazing sun. Dry, scorching earth, and a relentless landscape that seems to swallow the sky. These lands are harsh. These lands do not forgive even the smallest mistake. And for centuries, these lands have shaped a truly unique animal. The Longhorn cattle, scientifically known as Bos taurus. When you hear that name, maybe an image of an angry cowboy comes to mind. But the truth about this animal goes far beyond that stereotype. Because the Longhorn is not just cattle. It is a creature as tough as Texas, as stubborn as Texas, and as legendary as Texas itself. You are looking at it right now, and the first thing your eyes notice are those massive horns. Looking at them is unavoidable, because they are simply too large and too magnificent to ignore. From tip to tip, they can reach over 180 centimeters, and in some individuals, more than 220 centimeters. To put that into perspective, if a 2-meter tall person were lying down, the spread of those horns could cover them from head to toe. And they are not just long. These horns can bend and curve in every direction. Some rise upward like wings. Some stretch out to the sides. Others dip downward before curving back up again. And this variety is not random. Every individual carries its own signature, almost like a fingerprint. Now take a closer look at the structure of those horns. At the center is a core made of bone. Surrounding it is a tough layer of keratin, the same protein that forms human hair and nails. But the keratin layer in a longhorn's horns is incredibly dense. That density gives the horn both strength and flexibility. When it takes an impact, it does not break easily. It endures, and that endurance perfectly reflects the character of this animal. To truly understand the Longhorn, you have to understand it alongside the history of Texas. In the mid-1800s, millions of longhorns roamed freely across the empty plains of Texas. They were not heavily shaped by human hands. They lived in the heart of nature, under the brutal Texas sun. Then came the great cattle drives. Thousands of animals were pushed across hundreds of miles through dust, heat, and exhaustion, toward northern markets, toward railroad stations. These drives became one of the toughest logistical operations in American history, and at the center of it all stood the Longhorn Dot. So why was this animal able to survive those journeys? Because the body of the Longhorn was built for exactly this kind of hardship. For centuries only, the individuals that could survive the toughest conditions in Texas reproduced. Those that could endure thirst, those that could survive on very little grass, those that could resist disease. They passed on their genes, and the result was an animal that became a masterpiece of endurance and natural engineering. In short, by adapting to extreme conditions for generations, the Longhorn evolved into something that feels almost unstoppable. The metabolism of the Longhorn is one of its most remarkable traits. Think about summer in Texas. The thermometer hits 45 degrees Celsius. The ground burns like hot coal. Water sources dry up, and the earth cracks under extreme drought. Under conditions like these, most cattle experience stress. They lose weight. They get sick. But the Longhorn adapts its metabolism to survive. Its digestive system can process low-quality, dry and tough grass with an efficiency that most other cattle breeds simply cannot match. In other words, it eats what other animals cannot. It survives on very little water, and while doing that, it can still maintain its body weight. For centuries, Texas ranchers noticed this adaptation, even if they did not fully understand it. When scientists began studying this digestive efficiency, what they found was remarkable. The Longhorn's rumen microbiome, the bacterial ecosystem inside its digestive system, is structured to process a much wider range of nutrients compared to other cattle breeds. This is more than a biological feature. It is a survival system built for unpredictable land, uncontrollable environments, and brutal climates. And fighting this biological battle on these scorching lands is part of what makes the Longhorn feel almost unbeatable now. We have to talk about disease resistance. In the 19th century, outbreaks known as Texas fever killed thousands of cattle across the region, but the Longhorn population was barely affected. Researchers later discovered that this resistance comes from the unusual structure of the Longhorn's immune system. Its skin has natural defenses against tick infestations. The skin itself makes it harder for ticks to attach, and its immune response is better prepared to fight the pathogens those ticks carry. This resistance is so powerful that even today, veterinary researchers actively study the genetics of the longhorn to help develop new generations of disease-resistant cattle for tropical and subtropical regions. To truly understand this animal, you also have to understand its social structure. Inside a longhorn herd, hierarchy is extremely clear, but that hierarchy is not maintained through constant violence or endless physical conflict. It is maintained through body language, posture, and horn display. Dominant individuals communicate their status by holding their heads at specific angles, by turning their horns in specific directions, and every animal around them understands the message instantly, because misunderstanding a set of horns that can stretch over 180 centimeters can have serious consequences, sometimes fatal ones. And there is another ability most people never hear about: night vision. The eyes of the longhorn are positioned on the sides of its head, creating an incredibly wide field of view, almost 360 degrees of peripheral vision. The only blind spot is a narrow area directly in front of the nose. This gives the longhorn the ability to detect threats on the horizon long before danger gets close. And when that early warning system becomes part of an entire herd, it transforms into one of the most effective collective defense mechanisms in nature. The longhorn's sense of smell and hearing complete this survival system. Its ears can move independently, allowing it to process sounds coming from multiple directions at the same time. With this ability, out on the open plains of Texas, it can detect danger approaching from miles away. Even the faintest footsteps carried by the wind and the longhorn's impact on the Texas ecosystem is one of the least discussed, yet perhaps the most important parts of its story. This animal is an herbivore. It consumes kilograms of grass every single day. But, unlike what many people might expect, its grazing does not destroy the ecosystem. It manages it. The longhorn grazes in a very different way compared to most large herbivores. It does not tear plants out by the roots. Instead, it cuts vegetation at a specific height, leaves the roots anchored in the soil, and moves on to another area. This cyclical grazing pattern helps the grasslands of Texas regenerate and supports greater plant diversity. In a way, it works almost like a gardener shaped by nature itself, and its hooves play a direct role in this process. The underside of a longhorn's hooves is wide and flat. This structure gives it stability on hard rocky ground, but also in muddy and unstable terrain. But the marks those hooves leave behind do far more than create simple pressure on the soil. With every step, the earth is lightly broken apart. Seeds are pressed into the ground. Small pockets are created, allowing rainwater to soak deeper into the soil. Modern soil research has shown that the footprints left by millions of longhorns across Texas over centuries have helped shape the very structure of the land itself. And now we have to look at this animal's place in history. By the late 19th century, the longhorn was almost gone. Faster-growing cattle breeds, animals that produced more meat in less time, began taking over the market. As the economic value of the longhorn declined, its population collapsed. By the early 1900s, only a few hundred individuals remained. For an animal that once covered the plains of Texas by the millions, it was a dramatic fall. Then a group of Texas ranchers and conservationists stepped in. At Wichita Mountains Wildlife Refuge, conservation programs were launched that would become the foundation of the longhorn's survival. Animals were carefully selected. Genetic diversity was protected. And slowly, the population began to recover. Today, around 350,000 longhorns live across the United States. That number may sound safe, but there is an important detail. The number of individuals that still preserve the true original longhorn genetics is far smaller. Commercial crossbreeding is slowly diluting the biological traits that made this animal legendary. Traits like disease resistance, metabolic efficiency, and endurance. And with every generation, those ancient advantages face new risks. Now think about everything together. Horns stretching from 180 to 220 centimeters. A metabolism that survives the brutal 45-degree Texas summer on low-quality grass. Natural immunity against Texas fever. Nearly 360 degrees of vision. Independently moving ears. And beneath all of that, an animal that has shaped the land of Texas for centuries. People call the longhorn the strongest animal of Texas, but even that description feels incomplete. Because the longhorn is not just powerful, this animal is the memory of Texas. The dust of those great cattle drives still lives in its coat. The scars of the burning sun still live in its skin. And while the legend of the American West was being written, this animal stood at the very center of the page. And even today, across those endless, burning, wind-swept plains of Texas, it still walks, its horns raised toward the sun, bowing to no one. Fearing nothing, we are working hard to bring you more videos like this. So if you enjoyed this one, do not forget to like and subscribe. And if you are curious about which animal I will uncover next, keep your notifications turned on. See you in the next one.